I touched on the Rancor a bit in my review for the latest episode of the Book of Boba Fett, The Streets of Mos Espa, but I have not stopped thinking about the budding relationship between our hero and his new companion, so I wanted to dive in some more. On the surface, it's very cool to have a Rancor back in the dungeon. The callback to the Witches of Dathomir is crazy fun, and the prospect of Boba Fett eventually riding it in this series is exciting to say the least. This is all some really fun stuff for Star Wars fans to nerd out over, but what I really appreciate is how the Rancor and Fett are linked to each other and the themes being explored by the show. First, I think the Rancor is a symbol of Boba Fett's childhood. The Rancor Keeper explains that it's a calf, bred from champions for fighting. The entire clone army of the Republic was cloned from Jango Fett, one of the best bounty hunters in the galaxy, a champion. And of course, they were created specifically for war. But Boba Fett was special. He was created without any modifications for Jango Fett to raise and train as a son, and the Rancor Keeper says he saved this Rancor to train for himself, to be given a different fate than its siblings. Boba might already be feeling a connection with the Rancor, but the similarities continue on. He tells the Keeper that he thought they were just bred to fight, as if that's the only purpose a Rancor can serve. The Keeper says that they are powerful fighters, so that's what most people know them for, but they can also be peaceful and loving. They can form strong bonds with their owners and be trained as mounts. Their destiny isn't set from birth. It can be shaped by their owner or parental figure. Even though Boba Fett was set apart from the clone army, he was still trained to fight. Jango Fett's intention for raising his clone son was specifically so his legacy and reputation would live on. He didn't care about the clones, he wanted the Fett name to continue, to mean something after he was gone. He took his young son on dangerous bounty hunting jobs to teach him. Boba Fett killed another living being as early as 10 years old, and it wouldn't surprise me to learn he killed earlier than that. And Jango saw that as a good thing, that his son was already building a reputation to be feared. At the start of the scene in the Rancor pit, the Keeper notes that the beast is depressed. I don't think that means anything for Boba Fett's current mental state, but I do think it, again, echoes his childhood. After the death of his father, Boba was lost and alone and sad. He's taken in by Aurra Sing and a few other bounty hunters who encourage his worst instincts. They seek revenge against Mace Windu for killing Jango Fett, and the message of that very episode is that revenge is a confession of pain. Boba Fett as a child was full of pain and loss, and he didn't know what to do with it. His father taught him violence. Aurra Sing kept him on that path. He was just a sad child lashing out during the Clone Wars. Eventually, he began wearing his father's armor. He put on that iconic Mandalorian helmet, which I think could be represented by the Rancor's blinders. In a way, Boba was hiding himself from the rest of the galaxy. He could hide that scared little child under the helmet. No matter what he was truly feeling, he always looked like a badass. When he expresses surprise at the idea that the Rancor can feel depression, the Keeper insists that they are emotionally complex creatures. Star Wars fans can treat Boba Fett like that too. I've seen surprise and even anger at his portrayal in this show, that he's too soft or that he's not the merciless, unstoppable killer he is in the comics, that the mystery surrounding him has been ruined because he takes his helmet off and he talks too much. But the mystique was removed 20 years ago in Attack of the Clones. We got his origin story as a clone. We saw his sadness. They continued exploring his pain in the Clone Wars, and they're not being subtle at all about the fact that this live-action series is following up on that version of the character, showing us multiple flashbacks to Kamino and Geonosis. Rancors are emotionally complex creatures, and so is Boba Fett. But there is still that time period where he's not just a bounty hunter, but the best bounty hunter. The comics are where he's mostly seen kicking ass and taking names nonstop. He gets that reputation his father wanted him to have for the galaxy and the Star Wars fandom. But eventually he falls into the Sarlacc pit, and the pieces of his armor, or the blinders, are forcibly removed, and he does kind of imprint on a group of people, the Tusken Raiders. He falls into their way of life. It's a struggle at first, but he is accepted. He doesn't seem to care about getting his armor back. He seems more concerned with creating his own gaffy stick. He mostly lives a life of peace, and the only times he falls back into violence are when his tribe is threatened. The Sand Monster from Chapter 1, the Train from Chapter 2, and I see violence in the future for the Swoop Gang as well. Just like the Keeper says, Rancors are quite peaceful unless threatened. I think Boba Fett is seeing a lot of himself and his past in this young Rancor. They were both bred for violence, people tend to see them only as fighters, but just because they were supposedly born for a certain purpose, and just because the galaxy perceives them a certain way, that doesn't mean they have to accept it. Boba announces that he wants to learn to ride this Rancor, and I think doing so would be a symbolic victory over his past. If the Rancor represents his childhood pain, he would metaphorically be learning to control and overcome that pain and all those events that shaped him into the person he became. The first step to riding the Rancor is to bond with it. He has to look into its eyes and let it imprint on him. The Rancor has to accept Boba, and Boba has to accept the Rancor, which is the same as acknowledging the past he wants to overcome. We've seen a lot of reflection imagery in the first 3 chapters, reflections of the past. Young Boba sees his face in the helmet of his father. Later, an adult Boba sees his adult face in that same mask in a vision. We've also seen young Boba's reflection as he watches his father fly away from Kamino. Boba and the Rancor imprinting on each other reminds me of those reflections and further strengthens the thematic connection between the two. The Rancor Keeper warns Boba that learning to ride the beast will take a tremendous amount of discipline. That ties in with a theme that's been part of the series since Chapter 1. Reinvention isn't easy. The synopsis for the Book of Boba Fett on Disney Plus reads, "No longer just a hired gun, Boba Fett reinvents himself on Tatooine alongside Fennec Shand." The show is about reinvention. Boba Fett wants to rise above who he used to be. He doesn't want to be a bounty hunter any longer, he wants to be a leader. See Joseph Scrimshaw's awesome analysis of Boba Fett's time with the Tusken Raiders to learn more about his drive to change. But every step of the way towards becoming a crime lord on Tatooine has been a struggle. Other leaders are refusing to recognize his authority, there have been assassination attempts, even some of the citizens don't like the way he's doing things. The point being, personal change isn't easy. To quote the Clone Wars again, you can change who you are, but you cannot run from yourself. In Boba Fett's case, I believe he has been running from his trauma, hiding it behind some admittedly very cool-looking armor. Some people want Boba Fett to stay, just as they remember him from The Empire Strikes Back, a badass bounty hunter who gets the job done. But the sad little boy has been part of the character for 20 years. I know some people don't like that part of Boba Fett's story either, but I'm thrilled they're looking at seemingly everything that's ever been said about Boba Fett in the original trilogy, the prequels, the Clone Wars, and even the comics to inform this story and tell a compelling arc about this character and his quest to change who he is and how he is perceived. I've been so impressed with how this show handles fan servicey stuff like this. Obviously, it's cool to see a Rancor again. Obviously, the image alone of Boba Fett riding a Rancor excites me. But the fact that Jon Favreau wrote a story that gives those cool Star Wars moments thematic purpose is awesome. I think I'll do an entire video on how he does that so well. Now, who's to say if I'm actually right about all of this? I could be completely wrong in future episodes, but it all seems to line up with what we've been shown of Boba Fett's journey so far. I got a lot out of the scene between Boba and the Rancor, and now we've been given the suggestion that he might actually ride this thing. I think it would be an awesome visual to signal his successful reinvention in the season finale, both personally and among the citizens of Tatooine. Riding a Rancor into Mos Espa sounds like a good way to earn some respect. Oh, you all wanted me to ride in on a litter, make a big splashy entrance? How about I ride in on a Rancor that I trained myself? Is that splashy enough for you? But that's all I have to say for now. We'll have to wait and see how the rest of the season plays out. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Book of Boba Fett coverage, and consider checking out our Patreon page for even more. We're releasing video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode as they release. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.